start with science because until now the psychic warfare program, remote viewing, remote influencing, remote manipulation was in its infancy, but now of course thanks to the Psi-Lord Tim Rifat, we've integrated it with new cutting-edge technologies to enable us to control reality, change reality at will, and make any event we like come into being. So this video is all about how reality is fully malleable, the past is easily changed, and the future is easily changed, and everything is controlled by he, who is a fifth dimensional entity, and only Nagwal men are fifth dimensional entities, and all of the technology for the crossroads in human civilization versus the nuclear weapon crossroads, and the other one is the Psi weapon crossroads, which we've now reached and crossed. And here we're going to go into the details of how reality is mutable and totally controllable, and he controls reality, controls everything, and they call that person or being the Psi-Lord, hence the Psi-Lord age. So here's a seminal discovery that we will show the applications of in order to control reality.
Motion. MIT has just created a quantum time crystal, a scientific breakthrough that might hold the key to infinite energy. Is this the beginning of a new era? The idea that we could tap into a limitless energy source has fascinated humanity for centuries. But what if the future of energy lies in the quantum realm? A place where the rules of physics as we know them start to break down. What does this mean for our future? Can this time crystal really unlock the secrets of limitless power? In this video.
So, first of all of you vampires need to get your remote viewing courses, your remote sensing courses, and of course your MP3s with the Soviet psychic warfare and the American stuff. So you've got a grounding in the basics, and of course your Grail patterns, which is the Elohimic blueprint for controlling reality, and the penultimate one is what you want to reach, putting your assemblage point in your brain, the Metatronic state, and then you need to practice remote viewing the quantum realm. And how we get there, of course, is the Ant-Man. So simply watching the Ant-Man, then you can imagine a doorway in the Ant-Man scene where you're actually going into the dark sea of awareness, which links up with remote viewing, or dreaming awake, as Don Juan called it, from The Power of Silence, where you can then jump to different realities. So, the American Stargate program run by the DIA, David Morehouse called this micro remote viewing, and it's in his book, so I'm not making anything up. I'm just saying the Americans have been developing this for decades, and here we just developed it, well, I've developed it, to control all reality. That's a big statement, Tim. Aren't you bullshitting? No, you cynical bastards. You'll see the time crystal is integral to bringing in the Psi warfare age and control of reality. Now, here we go.
Science behind time crystals, energy, and the mysterious future of quantum physics. Hold on tight, because what we're about to explore could change everything you think you know about the universe. So what exactly did MIT achieve with this quantum time crystal? In simple terms, MIT's research team successfully created a form of matter that exists in a perpetual state of motion without expending any energy. Think about it. A system that's constantly oscillating, constantly moving, but without any energy loss. It sounds like something out of a science fiction movie, right? Yet here we are, with scientists at MIT confirming the theoretical predictions made by Nobel laureate Frank Wilczek back in 2012. But what makes quantum time crystals so revolutionary? In our everyday experience, we understand that energy is always involved in movement. For example, when you push a ball, it rolls across the ground, but eventually it slows down due to friction and energy loss. But time crystals break this fundamental rule. These crystals maintain a constant oscillation in time, in a state of perpetual motion, but without losing any energy to the environment. This discovery opens up mind-blowing possibilities. Could quantum time crystals eventually lead to a new form of energy production? Could we harness their perpetual motion for practical applications in energy generation? And more importantly, does this mean we're on the cusp of unlocking infinite energy? It's a tantalizing thought.
Isn't it funny the CIA have put Ant-Man in their video? I wonder why. And of course, for all of you vampires, you definitely need to bilocate into MIT's time crystal. And we'll explain how to bilocate. And with remote viewing, you can simply find the lab where the quantum time crystal is. And with the multiverse, you can, if you're a Nagwal, you can simply find all the time crystals in the Megaverse and bilocate into them simultaneously. Will show how, in order to gain time crystal functionality integral with your energy body. Good, because you're never losing energy then, are you? That's a good one.
To scratch the surface. If this kind of mind-blowing science excites you, make sure to subscribe. We dive into discoveries like this every week. You won't want to miss what's coming next. Understand the significance of MIT's achievement. Let's rewind a bit. The concept of quantum time crystals was first proposed by Frank Wilczek in 2012. In his groundbreaking paper, Wilczek suggested that it might be possible to create a phase of matter where the atoms oscillate in a way that violates the normal rules of thermodynamics, the laws of physics that govern energy and motion.
Now this, of course, is impossible to physicists. Entropy always increases. Entropy always increases with time. Entropy always increases with time. Entropy always increases with time. And as you see, science is simply a dogma. It has no basis in reality. And this guy comes along and says, well, entropy doesn't increase with time. For time crystals, well, that's impossible. Prove it. Well, they've just proven it. Well, that means that entropy, which entropy increases with time. Us scientists were taught entropy increases with time. It's always increasing with time. No, no, no. Here, entropy isn't increasing with time. This is earth-shattering. For you non-scientists, you go, the F's he talking about? But for scientists, they go, yeah, this quantum time crystal is a new reality.
Physicists around the world have been trying to bring the time crystal to life. In recent years, quantum computing has played a major role in making these kinds of discoveries possible. That's because quantum computers have the unique ability to manipulate quantum states, creating environments where phenomena like time crystals can exist and be studied. MIT's breakthrough is just the latest step in a long journey toward understanding and manipulating the most fundamental properties of the universe. And although the science is still in its early stages, the potential for time crystals to revolutionize energy and computing is already becoming clear. So what does MIT's quantum time crystal mean for our future? Could this discovery be the key to unlocking new forms of energy production? This is where things start to get truly speculative and exciting. One of the most intriguing theories surrounding time crystals is the possibility of harnessing zero-point energy. Zero-point energy refers to the idea that even in a perfect vacuum, where no matter exists, there's still a residual energy that permeates space. It's a concept that has captivated physicists and science fiction writers alike, with the idea that this energy could potentially be tapped for power.
And of course, Castaneda's Don Juan calls this the dark sea of awareness, when if you remotely view it, you can go through it and then jump to any reality you want. And as I explained before, Don Juan calls this dreaming awake, says it's a useless name for it, and someone will come up with a better name, which of course is lucid viewing, which links up with lucid dreaming.
Access this seemingly
There we go. So we see the CIA have put in the time crystal, so I simply bilocate in, grab it with the right hand, bilocate out. There we are, time crystal's in my right hand. Thank you, CIA. And this of course comes from the, what does this come from, anyone? What, Marvel film? I think this is Doctor Strange. Remember?
The constant oscillation of time crystals might provide the key to tapping into this energy field. If we could manipulate time crystals in a way that harnesses zero-point energy, we might be able to create a system that generates power without needing any input, effectively creating a perpetual motion machine. Now let's be clear, this is still speculative, but the implications are enormous. If time crystals can be manipulated to tap into zero-point energy, we might be looking at a future where energy is as abundant and free as the very fabric of space itself. But here's where things get even more fascinating. While the theoretical potential of time crystals is enormous,
well, what about if you've got infinite energy? Why can't you then use that infinite energy, which you've accessed by lucid waking of the dark sea of awareness, or the quantum vacuum, or zero-point energy? Use that energy to enter a different reality. You've got the energy all available to enter a different reality, which is what Don Juan was talking about in the Power of Silence. Lucid waking and projecting your awareness, a la remote viewing, into the quantum vacuum, or the dark sea of awareness, or the zero-point energy.
easy to work with. In fact, creating a time crystal that remains in a stable, oscillating state is incredibly difficult. The conditions required to observe these quantum states are extremely delicate, and even the...
But of course, if you do it from the fifth dimension, that's irrelevant, because from the fifth dimension, you can keep the stable state permanently there, because there's no time flow. Time's passing for matrix entities in 2 dimensions, or 4-dimensional living things. But from the 5th dimensional perspective, you can simply hook into that now forever. So when the MIT time crystal is working, you can simply from the 5th dimension link up to it from the 5th dimension. Only Nagwal men can do that, and then have access to the time crystal permanently. And of course, you don't want it as a crystal, you want it in your energy body. So someone like Thanos can't steal it from you.
This unexpected complexity adds another layer to the mystery. Even though time crystals could theoretically provide energy, there are massive practical challenges standing in the way of turning this discovery into a usable energy source. Quantum time crystals exist only under very specific conditions, typically very low temperatures and highly controlled environments. So while MIT's achievement is groundbreaking, we're still a long way from seeing practical applications. And even though the idea of harnessing energy from a quantum time crystal sounds revolutionary, there's a lot more to explore before we can unlock this potential. But what if this breakthrough is just the beginning of something much more bizarre? That's where things get strange. Let's take a moment to pause and think about the implications of what we're discussing here. If we were able to harness infinite energy, what could that mean for society? For the world? Imagine a world where energy is no longer a scarce resource, where power could be generated without harming the environment or depleting natural resources. The possibilities are immense, and the societal implications would be nothing short of transformative. But it's not just
And also it revolutionizes vampirism, because instead of sucking dry the Borg and alien filth, you've simply got access to the quantum vacuum and 0 point energy. And if, of course, you've got more control of the conscious verse, which Psi-Lord has, then you, of course, can change the information of the quantum vacuum to produce the energy that you would have got from sucking dry human and alien filth using vampirism. So as you can see, this technology has massive implications for vampirism.
and of quantum time crystals could lead to breakthroughs in other areas of science and technology, especially quantum computing. The ability to manipulate time crystals could open up new pathways for quantum information processing, leading to faster, more powerful computers. If you've made it this far, you're clearly into the deep stuff. Hit like and let us know your theory in the comments. Simulation, higher dimensions, or something else? What do you think is the most exciting potential for quantum time crystals? Let's keep the conversation going. Now let's dive into the debate surrounding quantum time crystals. Not all scientists are convinced that time crystals can provide practical energy solutions. In fact, many argue that the value of time crystals may be more theoretical than practical, at least for the foreseeable future.
That, of course, is true, because the humans don't have the technology. But, of course, they're looking at it the wrong way. Time crystals are the vital mechanism for Psi warfare, for Psi control, for reality control, as is plutonium and uranium-235 for nuclear weapons. So they must be thought of in terms of the vital component for enabling Psi warfare, Psi control, Psi tech. So time crystals are equivalent to uranium-235 or plutonium for making nuclear fission weapons, which then can be drawn to H-bombs with deuterium and tritium. Cut.
First one.
May behave in fascinating ways within quantum experiments. The reality of translating these behaviors into usable energy systems is a huge leap. Some believe that it could take decades or even centuries before we see any real-world applications of quantum time crystals. And there's another question. What if time crystals don't lead to infinite energy? If they don't unlock the ability to harness zero-point energy, what other groundbreaking discoveries might they pave the way for? Could they hold the secret to manipulating time itself? The possibilities go beyond energy generation and could extend into the realm of quantum computing and even space-time manipulation.
As you see, the CIA are coming up with space-time manipulation, which is what they are for. They are for controlling reality. These are the vital components for reality control, and thanks to the American filth and MIT, they've just given the Psi-Lord the component he needs for total reality control. Thank you, American filth. Don't you agree, cameraman?
Yes.
It's clear. The potential of time crystals goes far beyond what we can currently imagine. Here's the final twist. MIT's quantum time crystal could actually be the first step toward manipulating time itself. You heard that right? Time crystals might not just revolutionize energy. They could lead to breakthroughs in the fundamental structure of space-time. If quantum time crystals can exist in a perpetual state of motion, does that mean we can use them to control time? Some physicists speculate that manipulating time crystals could open the door to new insights into temporal mechanics, the study of how time behaves at the quantum level. In other words, time crystals might not just give us infinite energy, they might give us the power to manipulate time itself. Could we be on the verge of bending the very fabric of reality? The implications are truly mind-boggling, and we're just beginning to understand the potential. MIT's quantum time crystal discovery is not just a remarkable scientific breakthrough, it's potentially one of the most significant developments in physics in decades. The concept of time crystals, once considered a theoretical curiosity, has now been experimentally confirmed, opening doors to new realms of possibility in energy research, quantum computing, and our understanding of the universe itself. But what does this mean for our future? And what are the long-term implications of harnessing these mysterious structures? Let's dive deeper into the potential of quantum time crystals and explore why their discovery is so game-changing. The quantum time crystal, a new phase of matter. At its core, a quantum time crystal is a new form of matter that breaks the conventional laws of physics as we know them, specifically the laws of thermodynamics. In everyday life, when you move an object, you have to input energy to keep it moving, and eventually that energy dissipates. The object slows down and eventually stops due to friction, heat loss, or other forms of energy dissipation. Time crystals, however, exist in a perpetual state of motion without losing energy. This phenomenon goes against the very foundations of classical thermodynamics, which states that systems will eventually reach an equilibrium where motion ceases unless energy is supplied. What makes this possible?
And of course, that then means using quantum time crystals, the so-called death of the universe from entropic decay, where entropy becomes so large that we have entropic heat death, is a thing of the past, because with quantum time crystals, you can simply sidestep entropy and make God eternal tech. And for you non-scientists, entropy is a measure of the disorder of a system, and before these came along, it was implicit in all of science that as time went on, entropy increased, and therefore the universe would end up with an entropic death where it was so disordered nothing could work and there could be no energy exchange, and everything died out. You can look on YouTube for this now fallacious statement of science, because quantum time crystals have changed the game, especially if you migrate them into something called the consciousverse, which then controls the quantum information, which then controls the quantum vacuum and quantum perturbations from the quantum vacuum to produce quantum wave functions, which then can be collapsed by the consciousverse observation to produce reality. We have here how God tech works. And of course, for you flatlanders, you matrix entities, of course, The hidden part of this is the Higgs field, the light, the luciferic realness that comes from God tech to turn quantum reality into something real when you add the Higgs field, which we've been talking about. So as you can see, I'm slowly introducing Stone Age man to God tech, which is control of reality at the fundamental scale. And of course, if you want to do this, you need to wait till the humans have developed technology so that God tech can then be used to control reality. So you couldn't build a nuclear bomb until we had the way of separating U-235 from U-238, and U-235 being used for the first fission bomb, and then you can use U-235 to make plutonium for the second fission bomb used on Nagasaki and Hiroshima. Here, of course, the quantum time crystal is something that's needed by the Psi-Lord to bring in total reality control, and thanks to the American filth, they've done it for me. So, cameraman, say thank you, American filth.
Thank you, American Phil.
Properties. They essentially exist in a state of perpetual oscillation, constantly in motion, but not losing energy in the process. This is different from anything we've seen before, and it challenges everything we know about how matter and energy behave. It's as if time itself is somehow embedded within these crystals, allowing them to exhibit behavior that defies our traditional understanding. MIT's breakthrough is huge because it proves that this strange and seemingly impossible phenomenon is not just theoretical, it's real. The research team at MIT, led by Professor Mikhail Lukin, has demonstrated that quantum time crystals can be created and stabilized in a laboratory setting using a system of qubits within a quantum computer. This is a major step forward in both the study of time crystals and the development of quantum computing technologies. What does this mean for energy production? Perhaps the most exciting potential of time crystals lies in their possible application for energy production. The idea that time crystals could lead to a new source of energy, one that doesn't require constant input and doesn't waste energy, is nothing short of revolutionary. Currently, all energy systems, from fossil fuels to renewable sources like solar and wind, require energy input, and often.
That's way in the future, but what's most important is that if you can bilocate into a quantum time crystal, and we know they're in MIT, and it's like bilocate to MIT now and take it, bilocate out. Then of course you've got the capacity to defeat entropy. So by inputting that into your energy body, you then of course can input into your energy body the ability not to suffer from entropic decay and become self-sustaining and immune to entropic decay, and of course able to control entropy and much more. So as you can see, bilocating and using remote viewing technology to go into the quantum computer that's producing the quantum time crystal in MIT, and then of course bilocating into the multiverse, into all quantum time crystals across the megaverse, and take them and bilocate out and input them into yourself, then makes you God, because of course then you don't suffer from entropic decay, you become immortal, and all aspects of you become immortal. including your consciousness and the consciousverse. So you then become the god within the MIT machines and the god within alien machines producing quantum time crystals. So this truly is only useful to a fifth dimensional being, a Nagwal, who can simply take it. So the primitive, vicious, nasty human race has achieved at this juncture in time the first seminal quantum time crystal, which then can be used by the Psi-Lord to make him immune to entropy and able to control entropy, which means then of course you get immortality tech.
In energy loss. Even the most advanced energy storage systems today, like batteries, lose energy over time due to heat dissipation and other factors. But time crystals operate under a completely different set of rules. In theory, they could function as a kind of perfect energy system where energy is conserved rather than dissipated. This has led some researchers to speculate that time crystals might tap into what's called zero-point energy, the energy present in empty space, even in a perfect vacuum. Zero-point energy is often discussed in the context of theoretical physics, but it has never been directly harnessed in a practical way. If time crystals can interact with zero-point energy, we could be looking at an energy source that doesn't just last forever, but could potentially provide limitless power. This idea is still in the realm of speculation, but the fact that time crystal...
But what happens if you put your consciousness in the consciousverse with the quantum time crystal into the consciousverse? That means then that your consciousness becomes immortal and that you become a god in the consciousverse, because remember the consciousverse controls quantum information, which then perturbs the quantum vacuum or the zero-point energy to produce quantum fluctuations, one of which produced the Big Bang, to produce quantum wave functions, which then of course are collapsed by observation from the consciousverse and made real by using Higgs field derived from the fifth dimension, light mixed with Higgs particle and Higgs boson, according to primitive Stone Age science, or of course luciferic light, which is obtained from sourceness or hyperinfinity, and then bang, you've got reality. So as you can see, quantum time crystals enable God technology. Without them, you can't have God technology, you can't have the ability to control reality, and we'll show further on in this video how you can use it then to control every aspect of reality and make the multiverse something totally under your control and make every human live in the reality you want, down to the finest detail in Hilbert space.
Behave in ways that defy conventional energy laws suggest that the future of energy could be much more complex and potentially more sustainable than we ever imagined. Imagine a world where we no longer have to rely on finite resources like oil and coal, and where energy production is cleaner, more efficient, and virtually limitless. While this scenario may sound like something out of a science fiction novel, the discovery of quantum time crystals has brought us one step closer to realizing such a future. The road to practical applications. While the theoretical potential of time crystals is incredibly exciting, we must remember that we're still in the very early stages of understanding them. MIT's quantum time crystal is a controlled experiment within a quantum computing environment, which is far from the kind of practical, scalable systems we would need for real-world applications. The time crystals created so far exist under extremely specific conditions, including ultra-low temperatures and carefully controlled environments. They are incredibly delicate and difficult to study, And it will take years, if not decades, before we're able to manipulate these structures in a way that could lead to practical uses in energy production.
That's rubbish, of course, because by making them, you've had the quantum information and the quantum perturbation to produce the quantum reality, and then you've got the observers at MIT collapsing the quantum wave function to observe the time crystal. Remember, they were all controlled by parasites, the mud shadows, but now their internal dialogue is being totally suborned, taken over by the Psi-Lord. Hence, we had to put the past video on Rumble because YouTube took out too much content because it was too damaging to the CIA filth. So if you want to watch the previous video, watch it on Rumble. And of course, once that's done, then of course we've got the conscious verse changed so that quantum time crystals exist within the conscious verse, and the simple act of bilocating into the time crystal then makes the first bilocator into this quantum time crystal its originator and of course immortal, giving him God tech, which of course is the Psi-Lord, hence the Psi-Lord age. Thank you very much, American filth.
While time crystals may one day provide a new form of energy, we still don't know exactly how to harness their potential. There are many hurdles to overcome, such as how to scale up the systems used to create time crystals and how to stabilize them in more variable conditions.
As you can see, that's bogus. You don't need to, once it's been incepted, you can then steal that state and bring it into the conscious verse to make yourself a conscious immortal, and from that state input the quantum information that the entire megaverse was created only to make the Psi-Lord immortal and everyone else vampirized by the Psi-Lord, and you then input that into the quantum vacuum to produce the quantum perturbations. And of course, if you're five-dimensional, you can then input that as the Big Bang, so that the entire process of producing universes is simply controlled by God tech, and everything in chaos simply is there to be vampirized to feed the God that produced the eternal from being within the time crystal, within the conscious verse, to produce the quantum reality observed by the God being the Psi-Lord. And of course we've changed with the Mandela effect that the mud shadows never existed, and all humans have always been controlled by the internal dialogue of the Psi-Lord, hence the last video. A truly mind-deaf
Surface. And a great deal of work remains before we can even begin to think about applying them outside of the lab. That said, the fact that we've even reached this point is an incredible achievement. It wasn't long ago that the idea of quantum time crystals seemed like pure fantasy. Now it's clear that we're on the brink of uncovering new realms.
So now we go to using time crystals and to Kozyrev time density, which is Kozyrev's research on time, which of course you need to be a Nagwal, because unless you're a Nagwal you can't access the fifth dimension. You need to be four-lobed to be able to access the full vector of electromagnetism, and of course the Higgs field, which goes along one of the four vectors. So unless you're a Nagwal, it's irrelevant. So then you need to become one of the Nagwal's group, so that he can then, by Sochevanov #1, give you access to whatever he wants via, of course, the Nagwal woman, because remember, the Nagwal man points to the source, and the Nagwal woman broadcasts sourceness from the Nagwal to the group. And luckily, the only Nagwal woman in existence is Dua, who's been fully kill-shotted and become a Borg, so she's simply my slaveware, and I don't have to worry about the Nagwal woman, because she's simply like my smart TV. I just tap the controls and she does what I want. Thank you very much, American filth, for Borgeizing the Nagel woman. So I don't even have to put up with the Nagel woman. She's simply slaveware. Now, that means then by such of honor number one, the group can then access whatever the Nagel man wants to give them, which are services up to the level he wants to give them, which is very low level if you buy a service, or higher level, which would be called all the channels on the cable network if you buy your $250,000 service. So anyone who hasn't got a $250,000 service will be getting very limited broadcast and power levels, but compared to your Stone Age in the gutter or in the dirt level, it's gold tech to you, but only the beginning of what's available if you are rich enough to be able to buy all the services. Anyway, Kozyrev's research on time suggests that its properties like density, speed and direction. He found that X energy or time is denser near the receiver and action and thinner near the sender. So, time density is lost by cause and gained by effect. And if you go through this, you'll find that when things gain entropy, they're gaining time density when things become so to give you an overview of time density, when you've got cause, that's time density being increased by entropy, and cause is loss of time density, and effect is gain of time density, and entropy then links up with that. That's something which is losing or becoming more disordered, is collecting the time density, and something that's losing time density has been at a higher state. But we'll go through here. The authors note that according to some Soviet scientists, ESP, extrasensory perception, may involve an unknown form of energy which Kozyrev called time, in the telepathic transfer of thoughts instantly from one person to another. Time is the most important and enigmatic property of nature. Time is not propagated like light waves, it appears immediately everywhere. The altered properties of a certain second of time will appear instantly everywhere at once, just as time is everywhere. Time links us all and all things in the universe. Of course, it's fifth dimensional. Dr. Kozyrev told you blah blah blah. Time has a number of properties which they can be studied in the scientist's lab, and then we see with time, as time goes on, entropy increases. So with standard cause and effect, we know that the effect is going to be more entropic than the cause. So we postulate that time is thin around the cause and dense around the effect. So time flows, say like a river, it goes downstream, and say you burst a dam, all the water's going to collect down the bottom of the river. Same with time. Dr. Kozyrev found in these tests can be called PK psychokinesis. So that's why I differentiate psychokinesis from telekinesis, in that psychokinesis, in my opinion, is reality control. So for chemical events acting on the gyroscope pendulum at distance and without the use of any known force, Dr. Kozyrev would say that time density brought on this starting action at a distance. Pico is usually considered not as matter affecting matter from a distance, but as mind affecting matter. So they asked whether thought might have any effect on time density. Dr. Kozyrev replied, "Thought definitely affects the motion. When I purposely think of poetry or something emotional during the test, the equipment registers more of a change than when I think of mathematical calculations." So of course the poetry and emotional stuff is negative or positive torsion fields. Positive torsion fields, positive emotions, negative torsion fields, negative emotions. That's why the interdimensionals that are all made from negative torsion field type stuff feed on fear, torture, murder, and all the basest of emotions. Would the density of time then have something to do with telepathy? Telepathy always depends on the density of time. Time will be thin near the sender of the thought and dense around the receiver. So you can see with time density, we can use it, if we've got the stuff, to produce telepathy. We've already done tests in our lab to artificially change the density of time. When we make time denser at will, we can make telepathy happen when we want. What else affects the density? Thunderstorms, blah, blah, blah. Gravity, blah, blah, blah. Another characteristic of the energy Kozyrev called time is that it's a flow pattern according to his findings. Kozyrev thought about all living organisms, plants, people. Our right and left sides are not mirror images. And the asymmetry, altering the time patterns of a rotating system should add or subtract energy. Yeah, so if it goes anti-clockwise, it's losing. If it goes clockwise, it gains. In a right-hand system, the time flow is negative. In Kozyrev's view, our world is a left-handed system, yet the wheel of time is anti-clockwise. And it has a positive time flow that adds energy to our universe. But of course, if you change your position, you change, as in the equals gift, a shaman doesn't look at time as it goes past, but looks at time as it comes, then of course time would travel clockwise with respect to the observer, and therefore the observer would be collecting time density, not losing time density, as he grows older, and of course eventually would have enough time density to burn with the fire from within. Go back to the five-dimensional Riemann manifold and simply link his conscious verse with Higgs field, which is burning with fire from within. As you can see, I take all of this knowledge as simply stuff that everyone knows, but no one else knows it. So I'm the only one on the entire human race who knows any of this stuff, so you can see why I'm a once-in species human. So time not only has a pattern of flow, says Dr. Kozyrev, but also a rate of flow. He calls the rate of flow the difference between cause and effect. As the rate of time flow through a substance changes, weight is lost. Why is weight lost? Because weight, of course, is made E equals mc squared. So if you're losing energy, mass goes down. That's how nuclear bombs work. You detonate a nuclear weapon, and the mass left over after the nuclear weapon has gone off is less, because some of the mass has been converted into energy. E equals mc squared. Energy equals matter times the speed of light squared. Time is not matter. Time is like an aspect or ribbon of motion. Blah, blah, blah. This is all poetry stuff, conclusion. Blah, blah. So as you can see, time is simply measured by an increase in entropy, which is disorder. And if cause and effect are defined in the entropic way, that means that the cause is less entropic, so less disorder than the effect. But of course, if you use time crystals to access the conscious verse, then of course you've got that cause and effect become equivalent, because of course there's no loss of energy, there's no loss of disorder or gain of disorder, entropy. And of course, if you are an Nagwal and look at it from the fifth dimension, which is the only way you can look at time density is irrelevant to four-dimensional, two-dimensional beings because they can't access the five-dimensional manifold, then of course cause and effect are mutable. You can simply choose, I want the cause, no, I want the effect, I want the effect, I want the cause, I want the cause, I want the effect. So you can simply choose the effect you want, and the cause happens. And the time density that you would be needing to do this is zero, because with a time crystal, if you go into the fifth dimension as a Nagwal, Nagwals are the only ones that go in the fifth dimension, and of course you need to use a Nagwal woman to be able to deploy this technology to the matrix entities, which are the two lobes. And of course we've got the Borgai's duet, so that's no problem. In the conscious verse, you can be in the conscious verse in the matrix, you can be in the conscious verse in four-dimensional space, or you can be in the conscious verse in five-dimensional, higher dimensional space, higher than 5 dimensions. But to use Kozyrev time density to affect cause and effect, which then gives you complete control over reality, you need to be in the fifth dimension. And if you've got the time crystal embedded in your conscious verse, then of course there's no problem, because you can simply choose the effect, I want that effect, and the cause in the past changes automatically to produce the effect you want. Magic. I know this is a total mind F to you human morons with an IQ of 100, but let's go over the details now of controlling reality. And even further, you can simply go to the multiverse effect you want, the multiverse where the West was totally destroyed by Cobalt-60 effect, and the cause happens because when you get with the time crystal, you don't need any energy. There's no energy needed. All you need is the time crystal embedded in the consciousness of a Nagwal that resides in the conscious verse, and then he can change the quantum information using the conscious verse to change the quantum vacuum, the 0-point energy, to produce the quantum perturbation, to produce the quantum wave function of America getting covered in Cobalt-60, the West getting covered in Cobalt-60, and then simply get the observers, that's all the dying American and Western filth, turning black and becoming DEI from the Cobalt-60, to observe it, and the Higgs field, the light which he gets from the source. Remember, he's got all the light source from all the Jesuses that he's extracted, being a Jesus vampire, to then make that reality real. And bang, Bob's your uncle. America gets covered by Cobalt-60 from its war with Iran, and the suitcase nukes detonate the Tesla batteries, and it all was done by the Psi-Lord using this technology. So that's control over the multiverse, and the lights go out across America.